What is up, and welcome back to 24 Minutes of the Oscars, the podcast that takes a look at the 2024 Oscars 24 minutes at a time. I am Ethan Simi.
And I'm Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we're figuring out who abandoned Snoopy in the vestibule and talking about Maestro.
This love story chronicles the lifelong relationship of conductor-composer Leonard Bernstein and actress Felicia Montealegre Cohn-Bernstein. This is Best Picture number 8 for Ben. For us, Ben, excuse me.
Yeah.
We are almost done here, and I'm not going to say we saved the best for last, but this kind of kicks off a trifecta, in my opinion. We've got this, we've got Zone of Interest, and then we've got Past Lives. And then it's the Academy Awards, which is very, very exciting. Of course, we do have a guest on for this episode, as we do with all of our Best Picture nominees. We've got the director of the short film I Love You Guys and contributor to Men's Journal joining us to talk about Maestro, Billie Melissa. Billie, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I feel like no one has asked me to talk about Maestro, and I really love it. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yes, it's not a surprise to me that you loved it. I did reach out to you and ask between this and a couple of other films, and you chose Maestro, so I had figured you like it enough to talk about it. But here's the deal. I will set the stage. Ben knows I'm a pretty adamant admirer of Maestro. I have no idea what Ben thinks of Maestro. He just watched it for the first time last night. We have not talked about it. I don't know where this pod is going. So I just want to prepare you, Billie. If we have ourselves a turn of tide here and Ben does not like this film, it could happen. That's all I'm saying.
We have to have a fight. It's going to be like...
an international fight. Yeah, exactly.
I'm ready for it. Let's
do it.
Good. I'm so excited. I'm so ready. Okay, Billie, I do want to start this pod off by asking you a little bit about the BAFTAs. I saw that you got to attend the BAFTAs just yesterday now, as of when we are recording. This is going to be our first episode post BAFTAs, so we kind of have one of the last big precursors for the Academy Awards. Couple shakeups, in my opinion. How was it attending the BAFTAs? Because obviously Ben and I have never been, might not ever go, who knows? But I'm curious, on the ground, what was it like?
It was so crazy because growing up in the UK, if you love film, then that's your Oscars, the BAFTAs to the UK are what the Oscars are to the US, or I can only assume. And it was just so surreal. There were so many moving parts and I was so scared, honestly, so terrified, because when I got there, everyone seemed to know what they were doing. And I was looking around being can I go here? Am I allowed in here? Can I touch this? But it was so much fun. They were so accommodating, and everyone just you could feel the energy. Everyone was so excited to be there. So I feel really, really, really grateful to have been a part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the BAFTAs would be amazing. Attending the Oscars would be fantastic. I think it's so cool that you got to go and experience that. That's, once in a lifetime stuff, but hopefully
very,
more. Who knows?
Grateful. Yeah, hopefully I get to win one day.
Yeah.
So.
There you go. Yeah. You mentioned that, and you did just come out with a short film called I Love You Guys. I watched it this morning. Incredible short film. Congratulations on the release of that. That is so exciting. I think that is such a huge undertaking to make a short film. I can only imagine what goes into it. How does it feel now that project and passion of yours is kind of out in the world?
It's crazy. It took us 5 years to do. I got the script for the first time in April 2019. And then we had a cast by November 2019. And then we crowdfunded in March 2020, and COVID shut everything down. So we were for months couldn't shoot. I think we didn't get on set until May 2021. So we were sat for over a year with this money that we'd raised, not being able to get on set. And then I moved to New York, and I had to do the rest, direct the rest of it over Zoom. And it was so for all of us, it just feels so when it was coming out and it was the lead up to it coming out, we thought we were lying, telling people that we were there's a film coming, but is it real? We don't know. We don't know. We'll see. But it's so crazy having people watch it and be oh, this is what I thought about it. And it's been really special seeing people apply their own meaning to it. And it's not me and the writer call it our child, and we've given our child to be good luck out there, kid. Like, have a
Yeah.
good time. Let's see what happens. But I'm so proud of everybody. Like, I'm so grateful. And thank you for watching it. It means the world to all of us. Seriously, like every view, we're like baffled that it's at like 2,000 views.
Yeah, you guys did great. I watched it the other day. I thought it was a
Oh,
really
thank you.
interesting story, and it was beautifully shot and lit like that. I mean, I was so impressed. You hear short films sometimes, and it's just like, okay, we'll see. But watching your stuff, like, it was super professional, looked wonderful. So great job on that.
That's really like a shout out to Film Twitter. Like they pulled through for us. Like it was entirely funded by Film Twitter.
Nice.
We don't have any we did have a
Wow.
grant from like a local council in the UK, but that's like after we'd shot about like a third of the movie. So like
Okay.
it's funded by Film Twitter. Like Film Twitter is good sometimes. It's not all discourse and people being mean to people
Yeah.
are like actually helpful. So thank you for helping us make the movie.
I
Awesome.
I love that we started off on a positive note of film Twitter, because with Maestro, we're
Yeah.
about to descend into the dirty depths of film Twitter.
I saw your notes and I was like, we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
I think.
We're definitely gonna get there. I think there's much to discuss and talk about in regards to the discourse of Maestro, which I think is interesting, especially as of late. The closer we get to the Academy Awards, as is the case every single year, but film Twitter tends to get more and more toxic with their movie takes and award takes and things like this. I know there's something going around right now as we're recording. People are like turning on Emma Stone winning a second Oscar, and I don't know what we're doing anymore as a society. And I think it's really fascinating to try your hardest to watch a movie in a bubble, quote unquote, without like being influenced or kind of led by film Twitter and what that may encounter, especially in the likes of Maestro, a movie that was kind of mired and mangled when it is upon its release with film Twitter. But we're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about it. Like I mentioned, the BAFTAs. There are a couple things that I want to cover with the BAFTAs. But we start out every episode. Billy, I'm gonna start with you, asking our guest what they think of the Academy Awards, which I think is an interesting question for you because you just attended the BAFTAs. You are from the UK. That was the big thing. Do you put any stock in the Academy Awards? Do you watch all the way through awards season? Do you view the BAFTAs as like a precursor to that? Where do you stand on the Oscars?
For the sake of my career, no, I'm kidding. I really do. I was late for the Oscar party. I guess I started watching in like 2016. No, when did Silver Linings? 2012. So 2013 Oscars was when I was first tuned into it because I loved Jennifer Lawrence, and that was when I was kind of like thinking more about film. Like I really didn't have like a love for it from like a childhood. It came to me later in life. And I think it's just a great celebration of film. I think it was nice pre-film Twitter, but now everything is so like, just like what you were saying, like people get really aggressive. And to me, like as a spectator and a lover of film, I think it's such something to enjoy. And I don't really understand why people get so like violent over it. As a filmmaker, I get very passionate and emotional about it because it's very much like showing us what the industry looks like at any point in time. And, everyone's like, oh, it's just awards. Like, it's all silly. And it's like, it's silly to like an audience, but to a filmmaker, it means so much because it means we get funding. It means we get trusted to make the next thing. And especially like for Greta Gerwig, when she was doing Lady Bird, like she wasn't allowed to direct Little Women until Lady Bird had all that success. So like it really means so much to the filmmakers. And I think like people forget that when they're talking about like, oh, it's just the Oscars. And it's like, yeah, but for filmmakers, it's the Oscars. Like it's like the thing. Like even as a British filmmaker, like you hope one day that is where it will lead you to. In terms of the BAFTAs being like a precursor to the Oscars, I feel like it's changed in recent years because they changed the rules about like you have to have specific things to be like even eligible for BAFTAs nowadays. And they've like done it differently where it's like a separate committee. So like, I don't know. Anyway, they've changed like a lot of it. So, but I guess like all awards season really is a precursor to the big show.
Everything leading up to it.
Yeah. Ben, what's your pulse check, man? Because we're like 3.5 weeks away now from the Academy Awards.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll talk about some stuff with Maestro. I mean, there's an award that just happened yesterday for it, which I think, is kind of interesting to see how that'll influence its like Oscar chances. But um,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to this discussion. I'll say that to say the least.
Okay. I all of your bait in real person and on Twitter is killing me. I'm just being strung along. I don't know what you think. I don't know where we're gonna go. Let's start quickly with some BAFTA things, and then we'll lead into Maestro's Academy Award chances before we kind of quickly talk about the film. There's just a few things that I wanted to call out. Obviously, best film goes to Oppenheimer. This is no surprise to really anybody. I think this is just further cemented. Like whatever was in second place a week ago is now an even more distant second place. I don't really think there's anything up for battle here. Of course, The Zone of Interest does win Outstanding British Film and Film Not in the English Language. Interesting wrinkle with this, not nominated for like best film period at the BAFTAs. So I think there are definitely some puzzling nominations and things that happened this year at the BAFTAs. But The Zone of Interest locking up best international feature is not really a surprise anymore. I feel like that's kind of where we're headed in that category. Best animated film goes to The Boy and the Heron, which I feel is pretty big for The Boy and the Heron. I feel like that's a great boost leading into the Academy Awards. I really feel like it's between that and Across the Spider-Verse. If Across the Spider-Verse would have won at the BAFTAs, I feel like that's kind of a lock for that movie. But now things get tossed up a little bit. Two more things I want to call out. Original screenplay goes to Anatomy of a Fall. We just talked about this last week, a couple of weeks ago with Anatomy of a Fall. I've felt pretty strongly for many weeks now that it will be taking home the best original screenplay. I see a lot of people saying it's between this and American Fiction. In my opinion, it's not really a contest. I think it's Anatomy of a Fall by an avalanche, if you wanna call it that. Snow joke,
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to mention, Emma Stone wins for leading actress. Of course, Lily Gladstone not nominated. I think the biggest mystery conundrum snub, if you will, at the BAFTAs. But it does mean that Emma Stone picks up another big precursor award, and maybe we see first and second runners for best leading actress between her and Lily Gladstone become a little bit closer. Billy, do you have any like quick reactions on any of those wins? Any other wins that I might not have mentioned at the BAFTAs that you think are gonna kind of shake things up or play an important role in the next few weeks?
I don't know. I've really not been following the races closely as I have in previous years. I have, which is ironic because I've actually seen like all of the Best Picture winners except for Anatomy of a Fall. I still haven't watched it.
Okay.
I've still not watched
I'm
it.
I'm glad I didn't spoil it because that would have been just terrible.
I've held off spoilers. I've done a really good job of that. I don't know. I've got like a sneaky suspicion that Zone of Interest is going to win Best Picture. That's my hot take.
Nice.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's
like
how
that.
I feel about it. I feel like it's I really see, especially in the last few years, like Best Picture really reflecting the world and where we're at right now, like the climate. I just feel like it's the most like on the pulse movie. But then Oppenheimer is Oppenheimer, so like of course I wouldn't be surprised. But like my little maybe that's gonna happen is Zone of Interest taking home Best Picture.
I like that. That's a good take.
I think it would be a hell of a year for something to come and sneak Oppenheimer away. I think that would like go down as one of the craziest Oscar years for sure. That would be exciting to say the least. Ben, anything you're getting from the BAFTAs here?
I mean, the Emma Stone win is interesting. I wouldn't be mad if she won. Like Lily Gladstone obviously is wonderful, but I think they both gave great performances. They're both deserving. So it's interesting to see any of the pushback that Emma Stone's getting on winning anything because like she carries that movie. She does a wonderful job. So yeah, it's interesting to see her take the BAFTA.
Poor Things took home, I think, like 5 or 6 BAFTAs. It did quite well. The one big one that I'm going to use as our lead-in into Maestro is that Poor Things wins for makeup and hair at the BAFTAs. I think this is the biggest shakeup, especially for Maestro, a movie that seemingly was a front runner, if not a pretty distant front runner for hair and makeup. That knows. What are you gonna do? I think there's a lot of good work that goes into making Bradley Cooper look like old Lenny. But Poor Things takes home this BAFTA, and I think does make this category much more interesting and much more fun to watch. Maestro nominated for 7 Oscars. Of course, Best Makeup and Hairstyling is one of them. We've got Best Picture, no doubt. Best Actor, Bradley Cooper. Best Actress, Carey Mulligan. Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Sound. Ben, I'll start with you, because maybe this might give me a little bit of a hint as to what you feel about Maestro. 7 nominations. Netflix at the reins here. We know the kind of troubled, mired history that Netflix has with movies goose-egging, not coming up big in the Best Picture race, what have you. Do you think Maestro is taking home any Academy Awards on March 10th?
Maybe. How's that?
Whoa,
For an answer, maybe.
That's fair. That's better. I thought you were just going to be like, absolutely not.
Well, here's the thing. What I talked earlier about them winning award yesterday, they did win at the Makeup and Hairstyling Awards for Best Special Makeup Effects and Best Period and or Character Makeup. So they did take home 2 pretty big wins. Saltburn took home some wins. Barbie took home some wins. Barbie, I think, is the biggest competition personally for makeup and hairstyling, but it's interesting to see that the people in the industry wanted to reward Maestro for that, because I don't know how much it was in the conversation. So I think they've got a shot at that, knowing now that the industry loved what they did. So, but everything else, like, it's the year of Oppenheimer, you know what I mean? Like, and Carey Mulligan was fantastic, but again, this kind of seems like it's down to Lily Gladstone and Emma Stone. So yeah, if anything, it'd be makeup and hairstyling, in my opinion.
Okay. I'll take that. That's a big plus. I thought you were just gonna absolutely take the carpet out from under me here and just be like, it shouldn't even be nominated. Billy, do you think Maestro is gonna take home any Academy Awards?
I think if anything, it will be makeup and hairstyling. I can't really see it outside of. I think the competition is just crazy.
Yeah,
and it would be. But it's so weird, because when I come out of seeing Maestro for the first time, I was like, Bradley Cooper has got that Oscar. I'd like completely like wiped Cillian Murphy from my memory, and I was like, it's Bradley's to lose, because it just seemed like the last few years that was the kind of performance that was. And I just thought people would recognize it more. But I'm really sad for him that he hasn't, claimed anything.
Billy, I could not agree more with you. I think that is just, I think we're living in a tough reality right now where our boy Bradley is just getting done dirty left and right. And it's no surprise to the listeners, but this is a great opportunity to kind of dive deeper into it. This episode in particular, obviously, is interesting. And I kind of know how you feel about this, Ben. So I'm really curious where our conversation goes. But like, the Academy's unwillingness to recognize Bradley Cooper for his work in major / important / artistic endeavors, with, of course, A Star Is Born being like the big one here, has led us to an interesting junction in his career. And I feel like Maestro is kind of his double down on like, okay, well, they didn't see me for A Star Is Born, so let me give them what they like, what they love, what they adore. Let me give them a biopic shot in Academy ratio, shot half in black and white, shot with old Hollywood gleam and glimmer. And it still might not be enough. I know we talk about it year after year after year, and like, we did this with Everything Everywhere All at Once last year, of course, setting records for taking home illustrious numbers of wins, but like, especially the last few years, it feels like movies just come out in the wrong year. What happens if Maestro comes out next year? Does it have a powerhouse to compete against with something like Oppenheimer? Does anything get remotely close to that? Like, this is like a once in a 10 years, 20 years, like 30 years. I don't know. I mean, Silence of the Lambs is the last movie, I believe, to win the Big Five, and that was in 96, I think. So like, we're talking about first time in 30 years that something has acted like this much of a powerhouse in so many categories. And Maestro was originally supposed to come out last year. Didn't. Bradley pushed it. Could have been because of Tar. Could have not. Who knows? I don't really think the jury's out on that yet. I don't think he's been very clear. But it comes out this year, and it just still feels like I think we missed it. I think we picked the wrong year, and I think we're just gonna get steamrolled by something else instead. Okay, we'll get into this. I do think it'll win Best Makeup and Hairstyling. I think obviously that is like its best chances here. Bradley Cooper for Best Actor, 100% deserved in my opinion. And we're going to be talking about Best Original Screenplay after we talk about
nomination
the movie.
is deserved or a win is deserved?
Sorry, nomination is deserved.
Okay, all right.
I'm not going to do my boy Killian like that. Come on.
I don't know, man.
We're talking
I
Oppie
don't
here.
know. Yeah.
We're talking Oppie here. They're all my children. I think, and I know this was a really hot take, and we kind of talked about this on our like Oscars reaction pod that we did. I think Bradley Cooper should have gotten in for Best Directing this year. I think he should have at least been nominated. But of course, coming with that opinion, coming to that table, which is exceptionally toxic as it is, because Greta was not nominated, and we've got this entire flare up of social media thinking and believing that director is directly tied to Best Picture, which inherently I can understand the argument. There's 5 slots for director and there's 10 for picture. So it doesn't work like that. And so I think that you have a really good 5 lineup, but I do think Bradley Cooper should have been there. Who do you take out? I don't know. Like I don't know, honestly. So what do you do? I don't know.
Answer the
That's
question.
the thing.
Answer the question. Who do you take out?
I don't know.
I want to know.
I actually have an answer.
Oh yeah, okay. I want to hear it.
For a little bit of discourse, the category is called achievement in directing, and I think that some of the directors in there have not achieved more than they have previously. And I think that the reason I put Greta in there is because like it's insane. Like it's insane. She broke records. Like there's literally nothing more she could do. Her film is all over the place in other categories, and literally it's just her and Margot that are left out. And I'm like, they are quite literally like the beating heart of that. Like, how do you leave them out? Whereas there are directors nominated that I'm not going to name because I'm not trying to get cancelled.
Oh, come on.
She's going to swerve at the last minute.
I'm not doing it because it's not worth the like violent. People get violent onto it, and I'm not doing it. But there are people in there that I just don't think have like really done anything new that they haven't done in the past. It doesn't mean they haven't done great work. Like everybody has, but. So
you're saying Scorsese mailed it in. That's what you're saying.
Well, I was going to say this is interesting because there's 5 and I didn't anticipate obviously to dive into this here on this episode, but like I will say, here's what I would have done. I think Justine Triet definitely gets in for Anatomy of a Fall. I think that is a landmark film. I think Nolan and Scorsese get in for Oppie and Killers of the Flower Moon, in my opinion. I think The Zone of Interest gets in, Jonathan Glazer. That puts it at 4. We're going to be talking about Zone of Interest next week, I believe, and what went into that in terms of like directing and how he managed to capture that is something that I have not heard of really being done on that scale, in that tone, in that way before. That's an achievement in directing, in my opinion. I think you take out Yorgos and I think you put in Cooper, and that would just, if I tweeted that right now, I would be ostracized from film community.
My mouth is saying.
I will be sent. I fully expect people to be tagging me for this. I just think Poor Things is wonderful, but here's the thing about Poor Things is like the more that I think about it, the less that I like it, and the less that I think it is an achievement of what everybody is saying it is. The more I think about Maestro, the more that I think it goes in the other direction. And I know I'm on a very small island with that, and I understand that, and that's okay. This is the life of a podcaster. Sometimes you got to make content, and you got to stay true to your heart. And I got to do that. I got to stay true to my heart.
Do you put Bradley in over Greta?
Do I put Cooper in over Greta?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right.
Wrong answer.
I'll put mine out there. I take out
getting taken down by Billy.
Yeah, it's the wrong answer. It's
Lifetime.
100% the wrong answer. I would take out Scorsese and I'd put in Greta. That's what I would do. That's how I'd switch
this
it.
is fascinating.
Yeah.
So you're, but you would, that would be the only change you would make to best directing.
I think so.
You
I
would
mean,
keep everybody else?
if I got to vote with my heart, then I would take
Whoa.
out Yorgos and put in Celine Song. But yeah.
That's fair. Okay, so but we all agree Yorgos is out then.
For me,
I didn't know we were going to be
Scorsese,
litigating best director where it's locked. There's nothing we can do at this point in time. And we're late on the conversation, but Billy, you're going to take out 3? You can't lead us on like this and then not reveal your truths. That's dirty.
She might be sitting next to them at the BAFTAs next year.
Exactly. If I wasn't a filmmaker, I would, but I can't.
This is true.
So no,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So what you're telling Ben and I, especially me, I will never get invited to any of these because I've got just piping hot takes that people are just going to be like, get out of here. I can't have you. You're no neutral ground.
You might still go,
you're
but
doing your job.
yeah. But
You're
Yorgos
doing
might
your
be
job.
like, move this guy's card. He's not sitting next to me. You
It's
know?
like, don't sit
That's
on my
true.
table. Get out.
He's not sitting with
Wow.
me.
So early in my career, and I didn't know I would be on the outs with Yorgos. Seems
Go
like a
put him
great
with-
guy.
Put him with Cooper in the
Yeah.
back of the room because he's not walking up here anyway. So go sit him with Bradley.
Okay, that is an interesting question that I want to ask you. So the Academy Awards, obviously famously known for putting a lot of stock into who is in the front and who is on the camera. Bradley Cooper, 7 nominations with this film. Is he sitting towards the front of the room? Is he in a key indicator spot on the telecast? Because Bradley Cooper, everybody loves. He's making the rounds, man. Actors on actors. He's crying when Michael Mann is like, hey, I mailed you a letter. And he's like, I know. And he's sobbing his heart out in front of the guy who made Heat. You're putting that front of the table, right?
But then Michael Mann's like, I do it for everybody. Like, chill out. You're fine.
And then Bradley's like, no, that was for me. I choose to believe that was for me.
I'm sure he chooses to believe a lot of stuff. You put him in the front if you want him helping all the women up the stairs.
That's good.
That's it, though.
But is that not patronizing a little bit to our boy Coops? Like, hey, man, I know you're not going to win, but the least you could do, help out the winners.
Yeah, help
Get to the
everyone up
podium.
the stairs. Yeah. That's like, you can get really close to the podium. You're not going to get up there, but you can go up the stairs if you want.
Is not cool.
Who knows?
It's not cool.
He's Hollywood's good guy. He helps and he serves.
He's a
but he
helper.
does
He's a
not
Boy Scout.
receive. Poor Bradley.
It's true. Has Hollywood made a monster of Bradley Cooper? Have we created
No,
our...
film Twitter
have
has
we-
made a monster.
This is good. Yes. Okay. I agree. I think film Twitter has made a monster out of Bradley Cooper because while I will admit crying in front of Michael Mann at a gesture he does for everybody is a little intense, the guy exudes charisma and heart and passion, and he cares about what he's doing. And every time, especially over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, every time somebody sees our guy get in front of a camera and just be like, movies are everything to me, people are just like, nah, not it. And then someone else will do it and they'll be like, yes, our fucking savior of cinema. They get it. They love movies. What are we doing?
What's
That's
he
it. I just
doing?
wanted to raise
don't
the
know.
point.
Yeah. I think he's made the monster out of himself. I don't know that anyone else
No.
did it.
No, he's so
No.
sweet. I saw him speak in person. He came to London to like talk about his career, and he's just the nicest, like normal guy. I just don't know. Like, I don't know what he could have done wrong. I didn't watch his actors on actors thing, so I don't know like all the like backstory and the surrounding of that. But I feel like people are just tired of prosthetics and biopics and are like bad. But like everyone does it. Every filmmaker makes that film at some point in their career. So why is Bradley getting ripped apart?
I don't mean to say he's a monster as an individual. I mean, he's like an Oscars hungry monster. He's made himself a monster that way. The people are just
He's
like,
the Oscars monster.
chill,
Nom nom.
dude.
So
Yeah.
what? Like every filmmaker wants an Oscar. So why is it so bad when Bradley does it?
I mean, I think he's just like really over the top about it. I think he's just doing way too much. He's crying in front of Michael Mann. You know what I mean? Like,
what do you do? What do you do if you're in his situation? You've been nominated. This will be now like, I think 14 times. He will have his name attached in some way, shape, or form to a nomination. And he's never won.
This is the second movie. You guys are talking like he's Hitchcock and he's like been in the industry for 40 years and never won. He doesn't deserve it after 4 years. Like, it's not like he's tried and true.
Why are they like deserving based awards? Like, should we not just give it to the person that did the best job? I'm not saying he did, but like,
I do. I think we should. And I think there's stuff that he got snubbed for with A Star Is Born. And I don't know. I don't think, I feel like I'm hearing a lot of like, he's great, he should win. It's like, you don't win because you're a great person. You win because you deserve to win. Like, I don't care how nice and stuff he is. Like, he is a genuinely great person, I'm sure. But I don't think that translates to like, we should give him one. He's a cool dude. He'll help me up the stairs. Let's give him an Oscar, you know?
I think he did a really great job with Maestro. And if Barbie hadn't been made this year, I'd be like Team Bradley. I think I just don't know how you direct, star in, deliver that kind of, it's crazy to be the lead actor that's almost in every single scene and deliver that performance, deliver the cinematography, deliver the sound. Like, it's great. Like, the accomplishment, if we're talking about achievement in directing, is insane, like incomparable to anything that any other director has done this year, because they didn't put themselves as the star in the film. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being a little bit ambitious. I did say, the first thing I said when I come out of Maestro, and I don't mean it anymore, Bradley, so don't hate me. I said it would have been better if Bradley wasn't in it. But I take it back. I think that it makes, like, the film is made with him being the lead, and just seeing everything he puts into it is just, from a directing standpoint, I'm like, I don't know. I would never be able to pull that off.
Yeah. I just want to give you a shout out, Billy. I could not have asked for a better energy to come up and gang up against Ben here on this Maestro pod. This is exactly what I needed. We still don't know his thoughts on it. We still don't know what he's saying. We're going there right now. This is exactly what I needed on my Monday morning. Incredible way to start my day. I agree. So let's talk about Maestro. Let's talk about our general thoughts. We all think that it has the possibility to take home one Academy Award, but we're not locked in on if it's going to win or not. It is a tough category for sure. It's a tough year for Maestro. I did quickly want to mention, we talked about the biopic situation, and this is why I think it's so fascinating to talk about Maestro in the context of the year of 2023 with films, because are we not like, is not the entire world like, oh, Oppenheimer, like, it's doing it. It's nominated for 13 things. Like, it's going to take home double digits. Like, that's a fucking biopic. Like, what are we talking about when it comes to like, oh, we're tired of biopics. Like, Bradley's just trying to get on the train. It's like, no, this happens every year. And I think it's really tiring to listen every single year on Twitter to people be like, do we need more biopics? And then like, oh, what's the movie everybody wants to win Best Picture? A biopic. And it's like, what? So which one is it, guys? Are you tired of biopics or not? Because guess what? And I think this is a much broader conversation in terms of like the film sphere and like film knowledge in general, is like biopics have been winning for decades. Like, Hollywood loves biopics. That's not a new thing. And we're getting this like new era, this new wave of people that are consuming movies in a vastly different way than they ever have before. And they're like, biopics, so played, right? And it's like, no, that's the bread and butter of Hollywood, and it always has been. And I think Maestro is the living, breathing proof of that. Like, I cannot think of a movie this year that captures the essence of like old Hollywood remotely close to the way that Maestro does. And Bradley Cooper knows it. And I think that's where, Ben, I can kind of see your point of like self-aggrandizing and like self-awareness of like, okay, you're trying to talk about like your life and the potential futility of like your own artistic endeavors, like through the lens of Lenny, and you're being very kind of meta straining with like that text and that intro or like introduction and that porthole there. and for Bradley Cooper, and I could see that, but like, is that not on some level like what all great man movies are about, right? Like that the man that is acting at the core of a great man movie is in some way tied to the context of like what that great man is going through. Okay, let's talk about our general thoughts, because obviously I'm just fucking chomping at the bit here. Billy, I'm going to ask you a really forthright question. We normally always hand it to our guests, and I know it's a very kind thing to do here, but I know you love Maestro. Would you do me the honor of allowing me to ask Ben his thoughts first, please?
Please
Oh
do.
my God.
I'm just as eager to discover, like, because this is a mystery, and I'm getting mixed signals, and I'm so curious.
Okay, Ben, does summer sing in you?
Here's what I'll say about Maestro.
Oh no.
It's a top 10 Academy Award nominee for Best Picture, without a doubt. It's in my top 10. You talked about these 3 movies we're about to talk about are like this trifecta. And I will say, for me, in the next 2 weeks, we are bookending my list here with my number 1 at Past Lives and my number 10 at Maestro. So
Boo!
that's kind of how I have it
take.
ranked.
Kick him off the pod.
Listen, I'm happy to let you guys talk about this movie all you want. Trust me. I didn't experience the same movie you guys did. I mean, Ethan, you talked about like, isn't the person who's acting as the main character going through it? It's like, yeah, I guess, but it's your second movie and you're comparing yourself to Leonard Bernstein. Like you went through the same stuff that he did. Like, that's what seems kind of over the top here. Like, I know one of the other best movies of the year is a biopic, but I feel like there's a difference in Bradley Cooper being like, you know what, I'm going to do my best to channel old Hollywood. I'm going to do this figure that everyone loves and appreciates. And I'm going to try to get some Oscars here on my second film, versus Christopher Nolan, who's like, you know what, for my 12th film, I'm going to try to make a biopic of a guy who did maybe the worst thing that's like created the worst thing that's ever been created. Like, those seem kind of like different biopics to me and a different challenge here. And I walked into Maestro knowing not much about Leonard Bernstein, and I walked out pretty much knowing the same amount of stuff. Like, I feel like there was obviously kind of the switch that it's like about the relationship and not about him, which is fine. But it's just like, I wanted, if anything, to know more about him. Like, what makes him great? We just started out with him being like, oh, he's great. It's like, cool. What makes him great? I have no idea what makes him great. Like, we don't really get into that at all. Maybe my years of playing in orchestra stuff, I have a different relationship with conductors and their movements and stuff, that like, it was visually impressive, that scene where he's doing Mahler, and the one take. I want to give a shout out to Matthew Libatique, the cinematographer.
Mm-hmm.
We last talked about him with The Whale. He did that. He does a lot of Aronofsky stuff. This movie was beautiful. I will say that hands down. Like, this movie was shot so well. I really love that about it. But I didn't like connect with. I just didn't connect with it. Basically, Carey Mulligan was pretty perfect throughout this entire thing. So I think her nomination is like, that's another one for me. Like, if Emma Stone and Lily Gladstone aren't there, like, she was amazing. Like, I think should be more in the conversation here, because she does so much for this film. But your thought, I'm never going to the Oscars, so I can repeat what you said, Billy. I finished this and I was like, he shouldn't have been in it. He should have directed it. He shouldn't have been in it. Like, in my opinion, like, I think we've shown he's a good director. I fucking loved A Star Is Born. This isn't me trashing on Bradley Cooper. I think he's got the technique and the skill to do it. I just don't feel like this story did much for me at all. And yeah, it's just like, out of the 10, it's my least favorite watch that I had out of the 10 for Best Picture nominee. So I'm super happy for everybody that loves it. I genuinely am, but it just missed me.
Can I ask how you watched it?
On Netflix.
Yeah, that's why.
I mean,
yeah,
and that's
so
quite possible.
You need to feel it and see it. And like, I think if I'd watched it on Netflix, I would have been bored out of my mind. Like, sincerely, I genuinely believe that. Like, I think that the experience of seeing, and I'm not a screen snob by any, like, I've become one. Seeing Oppenheimer on 70 millimeter, and that is when I first became like it really did. I was like, oh, I don't care, I'll watch it on like the worst quality, but I don't care. As a filmmaker, I said that.
Yeah.
But now I really do believe that, like, having seen Maestro in cinema, I think it's a completely different. So go see it again, and then like I want to hear your thoughts.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
You might have to pay him to get him. You might have to buy his ticket and just let him know the
and
details.
popcorn.
I'll do that. If you find a local screening, I'll do that for you. I would love you to have that experience.
I think that brings up an interesting point, Ben. I just want you to know the tagline for this episode will no longer follow our standard naming convention. It's just going to be Ben hates Bradley Cooper with like 18 exclamation points. And it'll probably be our most famous video on YouTube. That would be my guess.
Let's get those listens.
Get those listens. So I think that's interesting, Billie, that you talk about the way that you see it, because I kind of went the opposite way, which I just really hate myself for, because when Maestro was making its limited theatrical run here in North America, it was on like a limited number of screens, and it was before it came out on Netflix. It was like the 2 weeks leading up to when it came out on Netflix. I had the chance to either see this at a local theater or something else, and I chose the something else, and I literally don't remember what it was, which proves like that was a bad choice. And I wish I had chosen Maestro to see it on the big screen. I will be going to see it again when it comes like to my theater as like part of like kind of the Oscars rep lineup that kind of happens every year. I think the sound, especially the sound, the score, and the energy of the film like deserves that level. And so I'm excited to see that. The first time I saw this movie, I'm so fucking ashamed to say this, I watched it on my like monitor at work with like my headphones on, and I was like, well, I gotta watch Maestro because I gotta fit it in this year. That was when I could watch it, because I have two small kids, so like I can't just like fire up a movie on my TV in the middle of the day. Like it's just they're in and out of the room and all sorts of logistical problems. So last night I rewatched it. I watched it on my television with my sound bar, and especially Mahler's Symphony. I was just like, this is so fucking good. This is incredible. And then I was like, man, I think I'm really going to fall even more in love with this movie when I see it on a big screen in the dark and get that experience. Okay, I'm not going to share any bit more. Billie, what did you think about Maestro? What are your general thoughts here? Anything you want to say? And then we'll kind of dive into specific moments of the film.
It was one of those things that I would have been really excited. Biopics are my like, I love them. Like I eat them up. I'm like the perfect audience for a biopic. And so I was really excited. And as like a musical theatre kid, I was really excited about it. And I saw it during London Film Festival. I don't remember how many films deep I was at that point. Maybe like in the late 10s, like coming up to 20s. And so like that is when you start to get a little bit like everything's bad, which I didn't have throughout London Film Festival until the last film that I saw, and that was the only one that I didn't like. And so when I saw it, I don't think I was like as in love with it. I think I like really sat with it. And then when I was writing my review, that is when I fell in love with it. I was like, oh my gosh, everything he did was so smart and so incredible. And like I said, it was like it's a movie that you can't critique, because what can you say to a guy who's like leading this massive, like A Star Is Born is a big accomplishment for a first-time director, but like Maestro as a second film is just like some directors like dream of making a film like that at some point in their career, and he has made like a pretty perfect movie in his second feature. So I'm like excited to see what he does. But every time I get defensive about it, because I'm like, from a directorial standpoint, like what more did you want from him? Like what more could he really have given? So I wasn't like its biggest champion, and I'm still not. Like there are other films that I care way more about, like Barbie and Past Lives, and it's really just those two. I really love everything, but like I get very passionate about like one or two every year. For me, it's Barbie and Past Lives, because I think that they're amazing. But I think he did a great job, and I think people are being very unfair towards it.
Yeah, I love Maestro, as you know, Ben, as I've quoted for many weeks now on the pod.
That you lost your voice about, yeah.
Yeah, I did. I lost my voice on, we'll have an episode coming out next week, I believe, on our other show, the Movie Draft Podcast, in which my voice is gone. And I attribute that to yelling Maestro quotes here on this show. I I love Maestro. The more that I think about it, the more that I fall in love with it. I think it is, of course, an exceptionally what I consider like self-aware attempt from Bradley Cooper. Like you said, Ben, like you just fall on the other end of the spectrum of like, I don't necessarily think that Bradley Cooper thinks he's Leonard Bernstein, but I think he sees himself in that mold. And that's what I find so interesting. I don't think it's a direct, like, this is the guy I relate to, so I'm going to make a biopic about him. I think he can see himself in that. And I think the film itself, while I don't think it's like a perfect 5-star film, I think that the inequalities or the detriments of maybe the lackadaisical feel of kind of the narrative tension of like, what do we know about Bernstein by the end? Probably not a lot more than we knew at the beginning. I take that in stride to recognize, like, is that not all part of the great man's journey? Like, do they discover themselves along the way as well? I don't know. And so do we as an audience deserve to discover the deep depths of that person if they don't even know who they are while they're going through these things in life? So I think there's a ton to unpack there, and we'll talk about our true cinema moments as we go through and maybe like start to kind of unravel some of that. I think Carey Mulligan is really sublime. We'll talk about her introduction into this movie, but it's like that is core like 1930s noir Hollywood. Like that, I don't know how you get more kind of pristine than that. And I think to me, those moments are where I adore Bradley Cooper being so unapologetically like himself and in love with movies, because like he is just that guy that was like the kid in the audience on Actors or like Actors Studio, right? That he was just like, hey, I want to know about movies. I want to know about Hollywood. Like, how do you do these things? And he's found out a way to do it. And I think that is really something special. I love that he starred in this movie. I think it's easy to look at this movie and be like, he directed it, he starred in it, he co-wrote it. Yeah, wow, this guy really wants to do it all. But I think that's the Bradley Cooper complex. Is like he does want to do it all. I don't know if that's to his downfall or not, and I don't think it personally is, but I think that's something that's interesting, and I think that shows and exudes a certain amount of confidence as a filmmaker, as an actor, as a writer, to like take this on and to like do this. He's wanted to make this biopic for a very, very long time. Of course, this, financed and co-produced by Amblin and Steven Spielberg and like his crew of guys that saw a lot in this. And I think there's a lot to unpack with this movie. I think it's really, really, really good. And Maya Hawke is in this movie. I mean, we'll probably mention it, but like shout out. I was watching this movie last night and I was like, man, Maya Hawke has a great like one-on-one scene with Bradley Cooper. And I think she's an excellent actress. I think she's quite good. Of course, was in Asteroid City last year as well. I wonder, because of like the Ethan Hawke head that I am, I'm like, man, I wonder if Ethan Hawke like stopped by and was just like, yo, Brad, what's up, my guy? Like, how's it going making Maestro? Maybe, I don't know. Like, I wonder what the vibe is on the Maestro set. It's possible.
I am curious. I know we want to get to these true cinema, but I'm curious what he sees in himself in Leonard Bernstein. Like, do you have an idea of what you think that is? Or do you just think like he just connected to him somehow and wanted to tell his story?
I think what I pull out of it is less about this kind of personal ineptitude when it comes to like maybe his sexuality or his relationships or things like that. I think that is like clearly distinctively Bernstein. But what I think Bradley Cooper sees is like a great man, a great artist, a great creator that maybe at the end realized that he should have gone a different route, or like things didn't amass to what it could have been. And I think that is not necessarily what Bradley Cooper is doing, but I think that's the fear that Bradley Cooper has. And I think that ties into like this entire Bradley Cooper narrative of like, did Hollywood make a monster of Bradley Cooper? Have we made a monster of him? Did we do wrong by like not awarding him for A Star Is Born? Like all of these things. Billy, you mentioned like you're excited for what he does next. I don't know what the fuck he's going to do next if he doesn't win for Maestro. I think that is like a hard fork in the road. And so like, I think that's what he sees in Bernstein of like this great, great person that is able to unlock themselves at certain times and moments and does so to the best of their ability when they're publicly recognized for that. And we haven't maybe like quite gotten there with Bradley Cooper. And I think, of course, the final scene has a lot to say about maybe what Bradley Cooper sees in parallel with that. Billie, do you have any comments to add to that before we get on to our true cinema moments and break the movie down?
I mean, I will say the thing that I really like that is the pinnacle of this film for me is the compassion that exists within it. A lot of people go ahead and make biopics, don't get consent from the family, don't like involve them in any way, shape, or form, and just completely make their own version of this person. And you can see how lived in this is. Like he spoke about still having a relationship with like the children, and he communicates with them, and they still. And I feel like when you're in it and you're really making it from like a sincere place, like for me, you just can't go wrong because it's so important to do that. And we've seen other films this year which did take other people's narratives and just make it their own and then have faced backlash because of that. But like Bradley Cooper's the one who's got the family behind him being like, well, this is the movie we wanted. And like, again, like the critique, you can't critique that. That's what the movie that the family wanted to be told. And they were there for every step of the way. And so I commend him for doing that because with his star power, he could have just done whatever he wanted and made his movie and he didn't have to include them in any way, shape or form, but he did. And I think that's really like respectful of him and the bare minimum that he could have done.
Yes. I wonder if like the way Bernstein feels about the Broadway musicals, how he's like, oh, it's not real music though, or whatever. Like that's how Bradley Cooper feels about the Hangover movies and like Guardians of the Galaxy. He's like, that's not real movie making. I want to do real stuff. So maybe that's how he sees it. Yeah, I don't know. It's a interesting thought for sure.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot to unpack there. Ben, the very last thing that I want to mention to you, you quite notably and publicly attended a double feature yesterday when you saw Maestro. So you watched Maestro in the confines of your own home on your television in the mid-afternoon, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then you proceeded to seek out your local cinema and enjoy the very best squanders that it had to offer, and that being the latest entry into the forever growing comic book franchise that is the Spider-Verse, and you saw Madam Web.
I did.
Can you just honestly, just give me the straight, give me the rub, as Michael Scott would say. Did you like Madam Web more, or did you like Maestro more?
Both movies got 2 stars from me.
2.
Wow. I don't even know if I want to talk about this movie anymore. My heart skipped a beat.
Madam Web
is like the worst movie I've seen in several years, man.
I was so much more entertained by that movie though than I was Maestro.
Oh wow, this is wild.
I
will say, this is why we have a pod. This is why I love you, Ben.
This is like, I'm not trying to like create content.
Difference.
I don't give a shit about that. I'm just like, I wanted Maestro. I want every movie I see to be a 5-star movie. Like I wanted it to be for sure. But I just like, yeah, I guess you can't set aside some of your expectations going into things, you know? And I thought, you know, as someone who himself has a dad who's gay and has like dealt with this, you know, some of the stuff that we see in the movie, I thought I would connect to it a lot more. You know, like a mom who had to deal with having like married a man who was gay and had children with him, and that whole context, like none of that stuff like hit me. And maybe it doesn't have to, but I guess in my brain, it's like, oh, a good movie may have like moved me a little more with that, you know, or like, I don't mean to say it's a bad movie. I don't mean that. I just like something, I feel like there's stuff there that could have affected me and I just didn't feel any of it, but I don't know. Like I'm aware objectively that Maestro is a better movie than Madam Web, but my experience with both of them is just like, I don't know, 2 stars, I guess. Like that was my thought process. Wow.
Well, only one movie had Sydney Sweeney, so I'll give you that. I know you're a Sweeney head deep down.
Yeah, Die Hard.
Okay, let's talk about true cinema. We got our general thoughts out of the way. Something that I completely forgot to do last episode because I was just so ready to dive into the film. I've got the intro and Old Lenny. I know I've mentioned Old Hollywood quite a lot. Like This is very core of like, let's start with the heartbreak and then let's back it up and then we'll get to that in the end again. I think in a very immersive way to first like show you. And I think like my wife was kind of in and out of the room during this intro when I started it. She stopped and she was like, "That's Bradley Cooper?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, that's Bradley Cooper. You bet it is." Like, I think that's a very good, like, quick take of like, oh, wow, whoa, Maestro, this is something, we got something here, because that is a lot to look at. It's a lot to kind of involve yourself. And of course, you're met with the old Lenny voice, which I think is wonderful. I think it's fantastic. A great smoking movie, of course, obviously, right off the bat. Billy, I'll start
is there
with you.
a scene where he doesn't have a cigarette in his hands? Like, he smoking.
I don't think so, man. I think
there's a scene towards the end where he's just like running into a building. I was like, dude, you're like 70 and you've been smoking for 50 years. How are you jogging like this? That's insane. Maybe that's part of the thing is like, oh yeah, because there's a 40-year-old inside that body. Like, it's not some 70-year-old who's like jogging up this hill.
It's because he's got the Maestro plates, man. He's like, I did it. I'm Leonard Bernstein. I made it into a song. I can run into this building now. I've got the power. Yeah. But Billy, any thoughts on this intro here? Anything you want to share on the first few moments of the film?
I always feel like that could be people's like reason they didn't love it is because like you show your magic trick right at the beginning, right? It's like, what if you watched the aging evolution, which I guess you kind of do chronologically in Oppenheimer, like you watch him go from one thing to another, whereas like the asynchronicity of it all, I don't know if people maybe that rubbed them the wrong way, but I liked it. I'll admit I haven't watched it since I saw it. I'm so scared to spoil that experience that I had of it that I just don't want to. And I can't imagine watching it on Netflix. In my own home. I would like need to go and see it in a theater again. Cinema. It was but yeah, no, I it was great for me. But I feel like an audience member might be like, "Oh, you've given away the magic trick."
I could see that. I thought it was an interesting intro, good bookend to the movie. You know, like I thought it was good.
I think for me, I think like it just that like you've revealed your magic trick. I think that works for me because I'm just like, what's the how? Like, how did we get to how do you do this magic trick? This is what I want to know. Like, why is Lenny talking about like Summer used to sing in me more and still occasionally sings in me and I miss her so much. Like how though? And I know you can argue like the script is rather, repetitive, hollow, lacking in that area when it comes to like the deep depths of like how do Felicia and Leonard like work together? Because I do think you get this much more like logistical of the relationship than maybe like the deep depths of like the understanding of who Leonard was as a person. But I think for me that works because that's him like understanding his path to how he got there. And like he's still being interviewed. Like he's still being an adjunct professor. Like he's still doing these things. Maybe in some way Felicia is to thank for that and is to blame for that and is to whatever you want to have. Like maybe he's not the same person and he doesn't achieve the same things without like her ability, her being the Summer, like that sings in him throughout the film. And so I think I'm initially really, really drawn because I'm just like, wow, this is a full immersion, like full stop right off the bat. Next here, getting the call to fill in. This is when he is first conducting. He is basically rushed to the stage, and I think it opens up an interesting quandary of like fate versus talent versus luck. Because we talk about it many times in the film of like Felicia is pretty adamant of like, if you didn't get the call that day, you would have gotten the call another day. And Leonard is pretty adamant where it's like, that was it. That was the call. And if that had not happened, if I had not conducted that day, I would not be the greatest conductor in North American history. Like that would have never happened. And so I think we have these two competing ideals in Felicia and Leonard, like very quickly right off the bat, and like how things work and how greatness works. And of course, shot in black and white, we get a very good looking, like Bradley Cooper in this scene with Matt Bomer and rubbing his feet. And like, I get it, man. Look, if your feet are there, I'm staying in the apartment all day. Understandable, totally relatable. Leonard's just one of us.
Just one of us, just playing drums on someone's butt, just like all of us. That's the way it goes. Yeah, this is like one of my favorite.
I think it's one of my favorite, most fantastic moments.
The shot, the overhead shot while he's running through. That's one of my favorite, like, cinematic moments of this movie. I thought that was really, really well done. Yeah, it's cool to see his excitement about this, and obviously when he's getting his praise afterwards, and like, you just got a call this morning. He leans over, it's like, with no rehearsal, you know, just like reminding people how tough it was for him to do it. But yeah, this is a wonderful start, and switching, like you said, back to black and white and shooting in 4:3 is like, it was really interesting.
It does a really good job of like setting up the whole, like, the opening into this, like, this is a love story, not a biopic. This is what it looks like, and this is how it's going to feel the whole time. And now we go, like, kind of like the beginning of a musical, like in an overture. We get like, here's all the music, and it feels like this, and this is what you're going to experience for the next 2 to 3 hours, and you go. Like, it feels like an opening to like a theatrical show, and I loved it. I was like, oh, my mouth was like open. I was like, oh my gosh, look at it. I was like, oh, the camera. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty magical scene. I love it too because it's the first time that you see that Lenny, like, doesn't close the door when he uses the restroom because he has a fear to be alone, which again, like, I think is a very powerful theme of the film, obviously, of like this competing ideal of like, how do you do that? And like this conductor versus composer, obviously, that we get a very, very kind of clear narrative insight into during his interview. Next on the list, meeting Felicia at the party. I kind of mentioned this is like the old Hollywood moment that I just think is, again, like, is this magic trick where it's just like, there she is. That's the angel. She's arrived. She's come off the trolley. Like, she stepped into the light. Here we go. And they're kind of get this introduction into each other, which I think is kind of a neat writing trick that Bradley does here, of like using each character to establish the background of the other through this very playful magnetic game where you realize their connection and their draw to one another, of what they're, kind of like pinging off of one another. And then this, of course, scene leads into the big rehearsing in the theater, the big musical number that we get. I know that's kind of a lot to talk about here. Billy, you talk about being a theater kid and obviously drawn to like the camera work of this movie. I can only assume that this scene and leading into the musical number was great for you.
I loved it. It felt like, especially with Barbie and like the dream ballet sequence, I was like, they don't let you do this anymore. Like, this is the thing that the producer looks at and is like, yeah, but this is going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of time. And like, is it necessary? Like, do we really need it? But like, to be able, and that's what I like about Bradley Cooper as a director, is like, he recognizes that he can just put his foot down and be like, I'm going to do this, because if I do it, then maybe like some person down the line coming up is going to be given the opportunity to be brave and make a brave decision. And he doesn't just like film it straight on. He like gets in there and like brings the magic of theater to life, so we can feel how it feels for Bernstein to be in that world, even if you're not a theater kid. And that's why I think that the theatrical experience is necessary for it. Because at home, like, I just don't think you can fully appreciate it. I mean, depending on how big your screen is, maybe you have like a great setup. I don't. I'd have to watch it on my laptop. I don't even have a TV. So it would be like this tiny screen for me. But yeah, no, stunning. Perfect. 10 out of 10. I'm falling more in love with it. We did it.
Yes.
We did it.
Yes. I love to hear it. We're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know really what else to say about it. Like, it's an interesting way to meet our character. The rehearsal scene was one of the better parts for me, even that for me, though, just really highlighted how much Carey Mulligan is just acting circles around Bradley Cooper. It's like, oh shit, like he is getting destroyed here, because she's so good in that scene, and then she maintains it throughout the entire film. But I thought like it's one of her best scenes of the whole movie. She was great.
I think one of the funniest moments for Bradley Cooper in this movie is when he's reading the script and he starts to read how he's supposed to like give or receive the flower, and then he like backs up, and then he's like, "Oh, I wasn't supposed to read that." I think that is like core like Cooper comedy that he like throws into this script, and like this very earnest like kind of repertoire that he has with Felicia, and like they're going back and forth, and so I do love that moment. I think like I was not a theater kid, but I love musicals. And this, like you mentioned, Billy, it's just like something we don't get to do anymore in movies. It's just like have these breakout moments of this, and so I think it does really, really work in this movie. Okay, next I have Flirting with Tommy at the Party, and this is kind of like a jump forward in time. We kind of see, we get, they have a kid, and we kind of go through a couple of things here. And the next big moment in Lenny's life is we're at this party that Felicia has notably put on. Lenny a little bit too sporadic to figure this out and kind of hone in how to host a party and the details that it takes. And he ends up flirting with Tommy in the hallway. They end up kissing. And his instinct when Felicia sees them is to be like, "Hey, honey, this is Tommy. Come over and meet him," which I think is very interesting, to say the least, to show Leonard can't figure it out. Like, he doesn't know how to be one or the other. He only knows how to be both, and he doesn't know how to be both maybe not very well is like the way to put it, but he doesn't know how to be both the best that he wants to be them. And you wrote down here in the notes, Ben, that Felicia tells him he's getting sloppy, which I think is notable. And it's kind of like the first riff that we start to see between him and Felicia, and really the first path that we start to see Lenny go down of maybe investigating things differently in how he pursues art and how he pursues life. Ben, what did you think about this part?
I don't know if you guys can hear the noise behind me, so I'm sorry if you can, but this was an interesting scene for me because to me, this highlighted what I felt like I was missing, which was their relationship and the behind the scenes of it. Like, at what point did she become okay with him doing this, but just said like, listen, just like keep it clean, like don't get sloppy or anything like that. I feel like there's so much that we missed out in between them getting together and this moment with Tommy here. Just like, that's what I want to see that stuff, like tell me how she's coming to terms with this and understanding like, why is she staying here throughout him doing this kind of stuff? But it was an interesting way to also highlight that by just like not addressing it, other than her saying, "You're getting sloppy, we're moving on." Like there's a decision there, and that makes sense. Me personally, like that's what's captivating to me is like, what's that discussion they had that got them to this point?
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. That's understandable. Billy, any thoughts on this scene in particular?
I think he just like found a really interesting way to like make that scene, because you can place a lot of judgment on it. You can like make it really romantic between the two of them. Like, we're going in and we're judging him for like making these decisions, but like the film critiques but doesn't judge his character, which I value because, he's not alive to be here to defend himself against it. And I don't know, like again, like a very respectful moment for me, and also like for Felicia's character as well. Like, it's kind of like the John Magara character in Past Lives of like, here's the third look into this window. I think he's done a good job of giving us like three perspectives of the same situation and how everyone's experiencing something like the same situation entirely differently. Like maybe he's not even conscious of it. The other guy's not really understanding the communication, and Felicia sees it like so transparently that she's like the all-knowing being in this film. And that's, she's the ground and he's like the air, like he's all this energy, and she's like, I see this, I see right through it. And he needed that because, otherwise everyone around him is just telling him how great he is. I think it does a good job of like telling us like what their relationship is. And yeah, maybe it would have been nice to have the in between too, but I think he did a good job.
Yeah. I think the movie rides an interesting line between being a biopic and being a love story, because if it was wholeheartedly like a love story. Like, I think it does quite well. I don't know if the audience feels the need to be like, hey, whoa, we skipped over some moments here. Like, we skipped over some pieces. But because it does fall under this biopic umbrella, I think that it's kind of this inescapability of like, I want to know more. I want to know more about the biopic. Like, tell me more about J. Robert Oppenheimer. Like, tell me what makes him tick. You know what I mean? So, like, I think you inherently get this kind of comparison that you have to live through. I know one of the big talking points about this movie is that there is a pretty big lack of acknowledgement or lack of however you want to put it for West Side Story, one of Bernstein's of course biggest, most important things he's ever done. I don't know a lot about Bernstein, and so maybe coming into this, I don't care necessarily as much that it's like, oh, like, whoa, we missed West Side Story, like we missed that era of his life, because I don't know that era, so like I'm okay not knowing it still personally, but I know a lot of people are just like, whoa, we skipped over this, and I think that does go hand in hand with that like biopic narrative of like, are we here for the biopic? Are we here for the love story? Are we here for trying to understand how Lenny navigated his success and his love, or like who he was as a person? And I don't know, those things are inextricably tied, and I don't know how far apart you can get them, but I think this movie puts a very powerful onus on like trying to separate them, possibly. Ben, did you feel any need to like be like, whoa, we should have talked about West Side Story here? We like skipped a big gap, or like anything like that?
Yeah, and I think maybe that's just like user error on my part of like, that's the stuff I was interested in going into this movie. I wanted to hear like working with Sondheim, things like that, you know, like that's the stuff I wanted to see. But I think we got more of a story about his relationship, which is fine. And again, like maybe that it will influence my next watch on this movie, knowing what I'm going into. You know, we felt that way. It feels very weird to compare this movie to Beau is Afraid, but like I was ready for Hereditary or Midsommar, you know what I mean? And then we got what it was. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, that's not what I thought this was happening at all here. So what's happening? And maybe this felt like it just got pushed as a biopic, but we get into it and it's like, it's really less about that and more about his relationship here. But for me, I still just like, in that case, I didn't get enough of the behind the scenes of the relationship. Everything just felt very surface, almost just like this montages kind of put together. It's like, okay, how the fuck are we here now? Like from what we just left, now we're here. Like I don't get it. And again, I'll always admit this is going to just be user error on my part, but there's stuff I was like, did I miss something? I don't know why they're cool now or why like she hates him now, like all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I am curious. I think I will rewatch this at some point now, knowing what it is, but that definitely probably influenced my viewing of this.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Billy, did you feel the need for any West Side Story content in this movie?
No, I really love that it strays from what all biopics love to do, is getting in every single second of someone's life. It's just not possible. It's never interesting. It's never, I've never enjoyed that. I always like come out so annoyed that they've tried to do that, because I'm like, it's a life. A life is not a movie. It will never be like, you have to take a section. And I remember when I was at film school, I was like they were like giving us like a pitch lesson, and we had to like pitch a story. And I wanted to pitch a story about one of the linebackers of the Baltimore Ravens. And they were like, well, what's the end? Like, you can't just do his whole life. Like, where are we starting in the story? And so ever since then, I've been really valuing movies that like make a section very interesting, and they still span his whole life. But it's not like, and then he did West Side Story, and then he did this, and then he did that, and then here it is. It's like very focused and very clearly telling you like the movie that it kind of is. And I value that, because I think a lot of movies get away with packing everything in and making it look sparkly and nice and getting away with it, and I don't like it.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. I think it proves an interesting kind of discussion point in terms of maybe at least what Bradley Cooper felt like Leonard Bernstein valued the most in his life, and if not, what Lenny actually maybe valued the most in his life. Of course, we get this discourse throughout the movie of like what is real art, what is real music, what is better composing, conducting, what is it? And I think from Bradley Cooper's perspective, these moments that we get, the next one here on the list, being interviewed for the book by an incredible Josh Hamilton, I believe, like cameo kind of question mark. I guess you could call it a cameo. I thought he was great. Being interviewed for this book, and then the conversation that we get with Felicia kind of near the pool in the third act, and like these much more concise, intimate moments versus a West Side Story, or like conducting, whatever it may be, or composing whatever it may be, or doing interviews or movies, or like writing scores. I think is an interesting sticking point that Bradley Cooper has made, and definitely a decision that he has made in terms of what is representing what might have mattered the most. I mentioned being interviewed for the book. I only wanted to put this here on the list because I think an incredibly astute, well thought out, slow push in to Cooper as Lenny, mitigating maybe the honesty that he refuses to believe about his life, but also like coming to terms with that, and looking. I just think he looks incredible in all of this makeup and prosthetics, and like the natural light and the way that it's framed. I think is a beautiful scene. I don't know if either of you have anything to say about this before we move on.
I mean, it's just a beautiful shot. Like I said, Matthew Libatique, like I think he deserves so much credit for this film. He did an amazing job.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Lunch with Lenny's Sister, which played by Sarah Silverman. Where are we at Sarah Silverman? Because I just rewatched School of Rock the other day, and I was like, man, she's terrible, but she's really great in this movie because that's who she should be. I think she oddly works as like a kind of a tonal dynamic in this film as Lenny's sister. I don't know anything about Bernstein's sister, but I think acting wise, I think she's good in this movie.
Yeah, I thought she brought a lot to this role. I thought it was really good. I mean, she has a connection with him that no one else has, and we kind of get a little hint of that, even when she's talking to Felicia, like he loves you, like she knows that. So I thought she did a great job. I've seen her in a few things, but I think she gave a good performance.
Yeah, like you said, it's like one of those things where like we don't get any insight into his childhood, or like where like we just get this little slice of it, and it's like this is where he's come from. Like this is the kind of family dynamic, and it's again like not force feeding you in any way, shape, or form of being like his childhood was like this, and he lived here, and he grew up like this. Like, but we get it because we see like sometimes it's fine to just have like a character that represents that part of you, and it's enough.
Yeah. Okay, this scene where Felicia is at lunch with Sarah Silverman's character Shirley, is this scene Carey Mulligan's Oscar clip, or is it the argument when Felicia is yelling at Leonard during the Thanksgiving Day parade, which we're going to talk about here very, very shortly? Ben, do you think if they're doing clips this year, which I would assume, hopefully, fingers crossed, like I'm always out for more clips, is this what they're going to play, or are they going to play the argument?
I feel like they'll play the argument, but they should play this. Like, I think this is the better scene for her. Again, just like ending of it saying like, and really which one of us wasn't being truthful, like coming to that realization. I think this is the better scene to show off what she's doing. Yeah.
I agree. I think this is the more, of course, like nuanced Carey Mulligan scene that she gets this big monologue, and this is her moment, of course, in a movie that is titled Maestro, that is about Leonard and not necessarily about her. Billy, do you think this scene or the argument scene?
I'm a big Dakota scene person, and if I'm being entirely honest, I can't like remember that straight off the top of my head. So I feel like the Dakota scene did a more prominent. Well, it stuck with me anyway, like that over the other one. Yeah,
definitely. Okay. Finishing his piece at his summer home, and then Felicia jumping into the pool. This is where Leonard has finished writing a song, and the very first thing that Felicia does is run out of the house and jump into the pool. This is kind of like the most visually representative of I guess, where they might be at in their relationship. Of course, this is where Leonard brings Tommy to the house for the weekend and tries to maybe pass it off as like, I know Jamie would like to spend time with him too. This also encompasses the scene where Leonard sits with his daughter Jamie and addresses very head on the rumors that she heard over the summer of her dad, and he pretty directly denies them and says like they're just rumors. They are fueled by jealousy. And I think this moment in particular is very, very impactful and very powerful and very well done and made, because we just sit and we just have to be okay with what Leonard has just told his daughter and the reality that he chooses to believe, live in, whatever you want to put it as, is pretty damning stuff. And so this entire montage at the summer house, gorgeous. Obviously, I know we've talked about Libatique many times now, but like, this is beautiful movie making here, just like flat out.
Yeah, I think we have some super powerful scenes here. I mean, that first one when she calls him up to the bedroom and to talk about the rumors that, you know, their daughter is hearing, and just like, don't you dare admit the truth. Like, that was such a powerful scene. And later we see them talking poolside. Like, there's so much. This was one of the better parts for me of the film, because we got to see these moments of the two of them together, like dealing with what the reality is and what they've both come to expect and accept, you know, in this relationship. So I enjoyed this whole sequence here.
I just saw it again really recently because they played it when he did his talk. They played that scene, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting choice of scene. Why did they choose it? And then I got it because it's like the silence and the holding. It's so much watching. It's so much watching them watch each other and watching them like, which one of us is gonna, you know, you're seeing everything. You don't even need the dialogue in that scene. You could probably just play it without them even speaking, and you kind of get an idea or a sense of like what is going on. You see him figuring out in his mind, like, should I tell her, should I not? And then like when he like gets up to leave at the end, like just that final moment where there's like a big like length of silence is just so, again, like really bold for a director to make that. It's so scary. Like, you want to fill in every silence or like cut away to something and be like, are people finding this interesting? I don't know. I really, the second time I saw it, I was like, this small moment is so impactful.
One of the few moments of the film where, like you mentioned, Billy, there's silence and there is a still camera. So much of this movie is soaring, is flowing, is moving, is energetic, is fueled by Bernstein's score, fueled by Mahler, fueled by such vivacious energy. And this is one of the very few moments where we have to sit as an audience member, and Bernstein has to sit as himself with that decision and that reality. And I think it's a very interesting commentary on like what that conversation means for his personality and for his life choices and for his truths and for like who he believes himself to be as a person. And so I think it is quite brilliantly constructed. Of course, Thanksgiving Day Parade. Who abandoned Snoopy in the vestibule? Just but instant, incredible like one-liner of all time, in my opinion. We get the massive argument between Felicia and Leonard. This is where Felicia basically yells at him and says, your truth is a fucking lie. If you're not careful, you're going to die a lonely old queen. Venomous stuff, really. And probably the moment for me, at least, where it's like capital A acting from both people. And you're just like, wow, we are in the throes of it here. People are acting in a movie, and this is what we're getting. And I think it's really, really impressively done. And I love this moment, and I love that the final thing that we see go by, of course, is Snoopy out of the back window, and very key player in this movie is Snoopy. Big year for dogs named Snoopy. You know,
indeed.
Shout out Anatomy of Fall as well.
Yeah, this was great. That fight scene, like you said, it's so powerful, and the way that they, you know, cut that tension with Snoopy just floating by in the back. But even just with all the, the kids yelling and things like that, like there's so much layered to this scene here. I thought just again, so well done, and really liked the whole Snoopy of it all. Yeah, I don't know. It was good.
Snoopy is great. I agree. For me, I loved again that it allowed us to just sit and watch. And it was still interesting. It was still dynamic. One of my other favorite argument scenes in cinema history is Marriage Story, when they're like, and we like start out, we get closer, we cut in, we see their faces like saying the worst possible, and that is excellent filmmaking. And then we get Maestro, where it's like, again, like it's a completely different scene. It's serving its same purpose as Maestro, but we see it in such a different way. And again, like there are so many different ways he could have shot it, but just to sit there and watch it, and then like we get to see like the parade happening outside, and like it's such a great moment of like life, because it's like, this is Thanksgiving, like this is a day for family, this is a day to sit together, and inside is like family happening in real time, like we're arguing, people like being angry with each other. I loved it. I think that, that's another version of like not explaining to us how we should feel. We get everything in the frame, in one frame, which is just crazy. A really great accomplishment.
Yeah, the framing is beautiful, like you said. The composition of it all, with her standing by the window and him sitting, just like, and they're both basically on the edges of the screen here. And the framing is beautiful.
I think two things. I think it's really smart, and especially proves itself in this scene and the next that we're going to talk about, when he conducts Mahler's second, kind of in the church. The aspect ratio choice of this film, of course, very, ambitious and like, hey, Academy, look at me, I'm an important movie. But also like, this movie is brimming with that, with that life and drama, and like these juxtapositions thematically and narratively, and like so much is happening, where Lenny specifically, but in this scene as well, like you mentioned, Ben, they're on the edge of the frame here. Like there is more happening than what this frame is able to contain. And I think that is interesting in the context of what we talk about, of like, I kind of wanted to know more. Isn't it a biopic? Shouldn't we know a little bit more detail? Can we go into this and that and the other? And like, that artistic choice to say like, there is so much more, but this frame can only capture so much, I think is really, really smart. Second thing, is Lenny drinking milk in this scene? Is that what he is drinking? I was trying to figure it out last night, and I was like, he's a milk guy. Very interesting.
It looks like that was she hands to him, right?
Right, a carton of milk, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what a crazy man. What a crazy man.
The things we notice in one frame. Love it.
I mentioned conducting Mahler's second. I think this is a top 5 movie scene of 2023. This specifically is the one that I'm most excited to see when I see this movie in the cinema in a couple of weeks. Jesus Christ. Like I don't really know what to say about it. It is flowing, it is natural. I can only imagine the technicalities and logistics that went into making this scene. I know like the famed conversation of like, oh, Bradley Cooper had to learn how to conduct for 6 years of his life. And like, okay, think about that, whatever you want to think about that. But like, watch this scene. This is transportive stuff. This is why movies exist, is because of this. And this is Bradley Cooper and Leonard Bernstein at the peak of their joys, at the peak of the reasons they exist on this earth, is for this art. And the flowing in and out. And then, of course, we end the frame with Felicia. We run over to Felicia, and she says, "There is no hate in your heart. There's no hate in your heart," which I think is pretty emotional stuff in this film. Ben, I sure hope you liked this scene. Man, if you didn't, I don't know.
No, I mean, how do you argue the scene? Like, it's objectively a really good scene, shot fantastically. Like, that's, the most captivating part to me, is just the way it was captured. And then pulling all the way back to bringing Felicia into frame, I thought was a really smart move and a really cool shot, not understanding that she was there the whole time. Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful scene.
Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna, because what do you say? It's perfect. Like, it's just crazy. Like, how, I don't know. It's just like, I think that is when in the cinema for me, like, I really something just changed. And I was like, this is what it's about. And he said in the talk that he didn't really know what the scene was for or what its purpose was until he realized that it's like Felicia's moment to notice. And like, it's really about that final moment, but you have to have the whole thing happening beforehand for that to have the same impact, because it's like, if you're an artist in any way, shape or form, like when you're in the middle of doing your thing that you know that you're really good at, like everything else in your mind is completely out. But then like we see him notice her and suddenly it's like, and that's my ground. Like it's like up here, like art is like all the way up here. And then like she is the pull back to reality, because like it's a separation between like art and artist type of thing. And like you could do a whole other podcast on just this scene, so I'm going to stop talking. It was movie magic in real time.
Movie magic in real time for sure. I think this is the best way to put it. Shout out Fablemans, Art versus the Artist. Incredible Judd Hirsch, Academy Award nominated Judd Hirsch performance in that film, which is still shocking to this day. Okay, Ben, you wrote down "Bye Felicia" in our notes. Just slow applause. However you want to recognize that. I'll let you lead off this scene. Obviously, Felicia does get diagnosed with cancer. This kind of is the finality of the third act, and kind of the next stage that we go into, with them coming to grips with like she is dying, and summer essentially is turning into winter, and life might not look the same after this. And I think there's of course decisions made here directly with Felicia and Leonard, but there's interesting decisions made as well when it comes to like, how does this impact their family and their children? And like, what's the reverberation of this death? I don't know if we really explore that. I don't know if we need to, but I think it's interesting to bring up regardless. Anyway, shout out on the notes, Ben.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, this was some of the most powerful stuff in the movie to me. This is moments where I felt like I could see my mom and dad, because they went through a lot of times of not, communicating with each other, anything like that. But eventually we're kind of able to reconcile. And I felt like what this relationship, or this picture was showing, was their relationship kind of like they've been through so much together, like her just kind of collapsing in his arms after the doctor leaves. It's like no matter what they've experienced together, there is a love for each other that is there, and that has been there the whole time. So I thought that was just like extremely powerful. And then his, we see him on the phone, just like, no, I'm not going to be there. Like, I'm cancel whatever you need to for me. Just like showing his commitment to staying with her. I think that's some of the first time we see him maybe appreciating her and what she's put up with, throughout their entire lives. And just like not returning the favor, but him just, just kind of like, I'm going to be there for her now in this time. So this was some of the best stuff in the film for me. Obviously just like some of the most tragic and sad stuff, but people coming over like, oh, you remember when we did this, then you just reflecting on these old times, then her just being like, no more guests, like I can't do this anymore. Like just all this stuff was just extremely powerful. I think this was a great end to the film for sure.
Yeah, I feel like this is like where you're kind of getting the reveal of the magic trick of like how it's made. Like this is because he does become this grounded, more like earnest being by the end of like he's had to take on her energy, and he's not just got her present to do that for him anymore. Like he has to really take the lessons that he's been taking for granted his entire life between them. And I think it's like him really realizing, and there's a really beautiful moment which I didn't know was like a thing. He said that like her folding those like tissues that she would do was something that his dad did, and he like used that and put that in. Like his dad did that when he was dying of the same reason, and he put that in for her, like so that you can see how personal like these scenes are for him. And like what was it, there was like a woman in the scene that was like somehow he's just like, I don't know, she was like adjacent to Carrie Mulligan in some way, was like a friend or a like they'd worked together for a really long time, and she was in the like she was just in the scene, and like it felt like really sensitive and really like you could feel the personal elements really going into it. And so a lot of times those like moments aren't really earned or like deserved, or like it feels like it's forcing emotion upon you. Like, it's like, now be sad.
Yeah.
But like, because of everything that we've been through with them, because we've been through like decades with them, like it's really feels, you really, really feel it hit, I think.
In a movie of pretty drastic emotional swells, I think this is like the most powerful, which is really something special. Ben, I just wanted to call out as well what you mentioned, this scene with Lenny on the phone saying like, cancel everything, of course I'm not going to be there, I'm here, is, I think, is very interesting because it does show kind of what you mentioned of like, maybe he's finally coming to grips and he's realizing like this Felicia was my ground. She was when I needed to do all of this and to get to here. But then as soon as he hangs up the phone, he picks up a pillow and he screams into this pillow. And I think that decision can be kind of interpreted two ways, in my opinion. The first, of course, with like, she's dying. I'm losing it, and I'm losing what I have, and I'm losing what I've always had, and maybe I didn't value that, and so I'm screaming. I'm frustrated. I'm mad. The second way that I interpret that is this the very thing that we've been dealing with for an hour and 40 minutes at this point is like, what does he prioritize in his life? What does he value the most? Is it Felicia? Is it his connection? Is it what she brings to his life? Or is it the reason he lives? Is it because of music? Is it because of the things that he likes to do? And so this scream is such a multifaceted moment that, again, we sit on, where it reveals so much about his character, because I think he is ultimately just frustrated across the board. He just doesn't know what to do or how to feel or where to be or how to act. And so I think it's a really important and personal scene, like you mentioned, Billy. The last one here on the list, conducting lessons at the end. I know we're going to talk about this or ask the question at some point in time, and the relationship that this movie might have to Tar, might or might not have to Tar. This felt like the most Tar-esque to me. I'm not putting it in the same boat as that film. I think they're two drastically different films, of course. But like, you talk about the final 20 minutes of Tar, you talk about the final 10 minutes of Maestro, there's something there. There's something that is kind of a force that's drawing them together. He's teaching these classes. He's no longer filling up these classrooms. He's no longer filling up these seats in these rooms. And then he goes out and he dances in a club with this kid. And then we cut back to old Lenny getting his interview. And then we end on a beautiful shot of Felicia. So much to unpack, so much to think about. But like, I think the scene where he's in the club, for me specifically, and like where he's teaching the kid, it just works because I think it just further hits home the point of like, man, this guy was just like, I don't know. Like, I just don't, this movie doesn't answer the questions of like, what is the societal burden of genius? I don't know. Like, are you precluded from living promiscuously? Obviously not, but like on some level, maybe. I think there's a lot of questions that it opens up that I like. And I end up on the side of the fence where it's like, I think it's an interesting conversation that it starts and not necessarily like a more damning one. And I think it works really, really well. Ben, final thoughts on final scene?
I mean, I thought this was really kind of cool. Like you said, it is the most like Tar adjacent or whatever, but so interesting to see him being like a master at the trade, you know, where he's just like trying to explain to this kid, like, oh, you're not giving them you're not leading them in the correct way, all this kind of stuff. And he tries to go through 3 or 4 times. And then eventually he's just kind of like, I'll show you, like, I'll show you what you need to be doing here. And he does it. And of course it's like perfection. And the kid's like, oh, duh, obviously. He's like, no, it's all right. And it's like, that's just a great example of someone just like passing along the knowledge, which is like what you want to do when you're training someone or teaching someone, like show them what you learned and what you're so good at. And I thought that was a wonderful version of him passing along his talents.
Yeah. Billy, any thoughts on the final scene?
I don't know. I think it does a really good job of like bringing the whole cycle back to a close of like he's not this reformed being just because he's lost his wife, and like, you know, that doesn't make everything better. And like now he's healed and he had to lose her, and like devaluing her life as his lesson. Like, I really like that that was not the route that we took with it. I think that there's so much to be taken from it. You know, it's in every story of a great man, if you will, that like he has to like completely devalue everything that he has in his life and then come back to this, and to see him still doing that, but like to understand it from a different perspective is, I don't know, I think it handles it really, really well.
I think it's another really interesting, if you will, but I think a really smart choice, like from Bradley Cooper. I think he makes a lot of choices in this movie. They don't work for everybody, of course, Ben, but I think they're choices nonetheless, which I appreciate and I like to see, and I think it sets itself apart from other biopics, from other films. True cinema moment for me, it's got to be Conducting Mahler second. I just that's like the day after I watched this movie for the very first time, I pulled it up on YouTube and I showed my wife, and I just like started crying, and I was just like, movies? Like, I don't know what else to tell you. So there's no way I can't choose that as like my favorite scene. But there's so many nuanced moments in this movie that I think are worth a shout out. Of course, we talked about pretty much most of them. Billie, do you have a true cinema moment? Is there one that rises above the rest?
It has to be the same. Like, it's just the moment, isn't it? And then also the scene in the Dakota, I think the two of them just really, you could just show those to people and be like, this is why.
I like that. Yeah, for me, it's Felicia at the lunch with his sister in that whole monologue. That's probably one of the best parts for me.
Yeah, I love that she ends that with any questions, and then the very last thing we get from Lenny at the very end, of course, is any questions. And it's inextricably, their souls are tied somehow, some way. Okay, awesome. We did it. We talked about Maestro. I feel really fucking good right now. I cannot believe it. Last thing we're going to talk about on this show, very, very quickly, the best original screenplay race. When we made our schedule for talking about the Oscars, of course, every year we like tie out another category we don't get the chance to talk about in a full-fledged episode to a Best Picture nominee. I don't think we had on our bingo card like, oh, we're going to talk about screenplay with Maestro. Like, I thought it was, I thought it was going to be actor, director, score, actress. I didn't think it was going to be screenplay, but here we are. The second time around, I was like, okay, cool. I think it does deserve a nomination. The first time I was like, what are we doing here? Like, I don't know if it's deserved. I feel good about it now. I'm still going to say what I've always been saying. I think it's Anatomy of a Fall. I think, I guess The Holdovers is like a second, like as a consensus, but there's nothing against that movie. I think it's a good movie. I just don't see that. Maybe I just don't get it. Like, it just doesn't, I don't get the magic trick on that one. So I think it's Anatomy of a Fall. Second place, I would probably put Past Lives, to be honest. That would be my personal pick. Billie,
yeah.
Who do you think is going to win Best Original Screenplay? I mean, the way it's going, it would seem like Anatomy of a Fall. I've not seen it, but my personal choice, I love the Holdovers screenplay. Personally, I really, really loved it. I love the Holdovers. I'd say it's like my number 2 or 3 of last year.
Nice.
Barbie, Saltburn and Holdovers, like holding hands. Yeah. But like Holdovers is like slightly above it because another Saltburn should have been nominated for Best Original Screenplay, in my opinion. Past Lives as well, a beautiful screenplay. I think it's a great category, really. Like all of them should just be to like in a year of great screenplays, like to be the final 5 that gets to compete is amazing.
Yeah, we put on Saltburn yesterday. Also, it was a fun rewatch. I like that movie.
So great.
I want Past Lives to win. I don't think it's going to. It does seem like Anatomy of a Fall has it kind of locked up, but Past Lives would be my wish for sure.
Such a stunning screenplay.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful screenplay for sure. I'm a little surprised. I was thinking about this, and maybe it's just the consumer aspect of me being the hardcore consumer that I am. But like every year, shouldn't the Academy be putting out like, here's the screenplays of the 5 movies that were nominated for screenplay? Like, pay $120 and get a book, a set of five screenplay books. Like, I'd buy that. personally, because I'm like, yo, I'd love to have all of these. And I think that would be very, very cool. Of course, I know Neon does something like this with like their best movies of the year. They put out like a box set every year. And I think there's a lot of things that we need to be doing. Of course, Maestro being on Netflix makes all of that conversation very difficult, because like, is it ever going to get a physical release? I doubt it. Which I think is
scary that it could just disappear one day. Like, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely terrifying and horrifying, and I think it's terrible, and I think we need to figure this out. But again, another topic for another pod. Okay, any final thoughts on Maestro? Anything that you didn't get out before we wrap the episode? Anybody want to ask who abandoned Snoopy in the vestibule one more time?
We're under 2 hours, so I just want to say thank you for reining it in. I appreciate that.
I also want to give myself kudos for reining it in, but I will say, Billy, I want to give you kudos because you're the guest on the longest episode of our Oscars season.
Yeah.
Who would have thought it'd be Maestro? Longer than Oppenheimer? I wouldn't think so, but here we are. Look at us.
I have a horrible habit of doing this. I've done this on other podcasts, and basically if you don't want a long podcast, don't invite me on it. Because apparently,
listen. It's not you. It's me. It's me, because I was just like, Maestro, I've been looking forward to talking about it for so long. And by the time we got to True Cinema, I was like, oh, fuck, we're an hour into the show. We haven't talked about the movie. So that's where we're at. I feel really good. I think Maestro's an incredible feat of filmmaking. Billy, thank you so much for coming on this podcast for this episode. If people want to find more of you, where can they find you at?
They can find me online at Billie Melissa _ I'm around the places.
Nice.
Yeah.
You have a link to your short, right? Like, it's pinned in your profile, I believe.
Yeah, it's on my profile. It's in my like bio thing.
Yeah, I definitely recommend checking that out for sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Short is called I Love You Guys. Check it out on YouTube for sure. Again, thanks for being on the a very long episode of a movie that Ben absolutely hated. So I think it was fantastic. I think we won all the way around. Big win for everybody here on the show. I went into this episode not really having a lot of hope that Ben would love this movie, and I was correct. But I had some semblance of hope that I would maybe turn the tides, and I didn't do it. So it's okay. This is the reality we have to live in.
At least I was here to have
I'm seriously, if I had to go this journey alone, I don't think I would have made it. I think I would have crumbled and not made it out on the other side. So thank you for your support. Of course, next week on this show, we're just living our life. You know, we're just trying to get promoted in the ranks, just trying to raise a family. We're just trying to do it all right on the other side of Auschwitz. We're talking about the Zone of Interest. We've got the 2 A24 Best Picture nominees closing us out, of course, kind of naturally, since we're an A24 pod. I don't know what you thought of Zone of Interest, Ben, and I guess I won't know for a couple of weeks, huh?
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. I'll tell you, it's above Maestro, but I guess everything is at this point. So
that is a fucking cruel. That is a cruel way to end this show.
Top 9. It's in the top 9 for sure. Yeah, we'll get to it. But yeah, what awards do you guys think Maestro is going to pick up at the Academy Awards? Is it going to win Best Picture? Let us know. We're on Twitter and Instagram at 24 minutes of A24. And also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can see all of our beautiful faces, our guests included, and subscribe there, ring the bell, all that kind of stuff. We appreciate all of your support. I am Ben Lawhorn.
And I am Ethan Simi. Summer sings in me. Doesn't sing in Ben, but it sings in me.
That's true.